Today's guest is Roadie. Coming out of Provo, Utah, Roadie has been wowing crowds all over their scene with their smooth melodies and engaging live shows. Welcome, Roadie.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. So let's start way back at the beginning. Where were you born and raised, and how did music come into your life?
I was born in Logan, but I was raised in South Carolina. So I grew up mostly in Columbia, actually. It's right dead in the center. So it's a lot of uh, very Southern hospitality.
Yeah,
And uh, that was kind of the basis for kind of how I got used to people, I guess. And my dad has actually been playing guitar since he was 16, I think, maybe earlier. But he's definitely the one that kind of got me started with performing. When I was pretty little, he would get me he'd play guitar and he'd have me sing a song. And so I've kind of been singing since then. Um, yeah.
that's awesome. Did you like performing as a kid, or was it kind of scary for you?
I was the kind of kid that definitely liked to be in the spotlight. So when I was little, I was super into it. But as I got more into middle school years, I definitely got more insecure, as you do, typical. And I stopped doing like solo performing a lot more at that point. I was part of choirs and things like that, but definitely not wanting to have the spotlight at that point.
Yeah. What kind of music did you listen to growing up? Was it the same type of stuff your parents listening to, or what was it?
Yeah. So my dad definitely listens to a lot of the old singer-songwriters like John Denver, James Taylor, kind of all along that road. When I was little, while I was growing up in South Carolina, I 100% wanted to be a cowgirl, which is it's great. So I definitely listened to a lot of country music, which I have kind of grown out of. I don't listen to it as much anymore. But I still definitely know a lot of songs that come up on the radio when people have country music on. So that's
Yeah,
kind of fun.
that's awesome. When did you move to Utah?
We moved to Utah in middle school, I believe. Actually, we moved back to Logan when I was at the end of elementary school and then moved to Provo, Orem area in middle school.
Gotcha. So when did you
Mhm.
start writing? Have you always like played an instrument, or how'd that go?
I took piano lessons all through grade school. But I kind of tried to pick up guitar on and off all growing up. I took lessons when I was like 8, but then I quit by the time I was like 9 or 10. So definitely didn't have much foundation there other than seeing my dad play all the time. So it wasn't until I graduated high school, actually, it was the year after I graduated high school that I finally picked up guitar and started actually, sticking to it and not just kind of fumbling around with it and then letting it go. So that was about when I started writing as well. It was kind of when I got into more of the singer-songwriter genre of music. I listened to a lot of Ed Sheeran, actually.
Nice.
He was definitely kind of the kicking off point. Just listening is like his earlier stuff, when he was very much into the acoustic, very singer-songwriter kind of stuff. And it was really cool to me to see how he kind of combined all of the elements of songwriting into something that was really powerful. And I think that's kind of what got me into it in the first place.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, his old stuff is just amazing. I mean, his new stuff is too. But
So
like,
good.
there's something
Yeah.
about the old performances he used to put on with just him and his
Mhm.
acoustic guitar, stuck in a room, trying to convince people that he's good. And there's something
Yeah.
so special about what it was. It's just amazing.
Oh my gosh, yes. And then him with his loop pedal.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. I got a loop station at one point because I just wanted to be exactly like him.
Yeah. It's
And
interesting
then I was
because I
like,
think
this is hard.
he made loop pedals like a thing to want. I don't think they were that big before
Yeah.
he came up with it, but he changed
Yeah,
the
they
game.
definitely weren't mainstream like he got them to be, I think, for guitar players. Super
Yeah.
cool.
That's awesome. So did you kind of like try and structure your songs like Ed Sheeran did at first? Like kind of just make your own Ed Sheeran song, or how was it?
um, my first couple of songs I wrote were definitely very influenced by him. uh All the World actually was the first song that I started writing. And that one I think definitely has a lot of elements of his style of guitar playing and a lot of the thematic elements of the song.
That's a pretty good
So
song. Song.
yeah, I mean, I didn't finish it for like 4 years, so I got it started and then it just kind of died.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
yeah, I definitely give a lot of credit to him for uh, accidentally teaching me how to songwrite.
Yeah, that's cool. When did you decide you wanted a band?
Oh, I think it was pretty early on because I recognized that there were, this is going to sound terrible, but there were so many female singer-songwriters in the Provo music scene.
Yeah.
And I just felt like it was oversaturated and I didn't want to be just another one of those. And I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to be a little bit more of a powerful sound, I
Yeah,
guess.
a little more,
And
little more right there. Yeah.
yeah, and I took a lot of inspiration from Ray LaMontagne, actually. I don't know if you've heard him,
I can't say.
but his stuff is very like soulful. It's got the singer-songwriter feel to it in the songwriting, but he has these great like backup singers and like horns in some of his songs, and that was definitely where I was like, this is the kind of stuff I want to do. Like this music I connect with, I get, and I just pretty early on I wanted to have more people involved. And also just I think from choirs, like being a part of choirs, you feel how different it is to make music with a bigger group, like with other people, and it is a lot more powerful when you have other people involved. It's something a little bit more unique when you bring all the pieces together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it sounds like you had a vision for like a very full sound. If you're talking like trumpets and background singers and stuff like
Yeah.
that, like some bands prefer to be very tight, like a 3-piece, make it work. Sounds like you had like a full
Mm-hmm.
vision for it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how it would come together because I didn't know that many musicians at that point.
Yeah.
And it was it was definitely, I just heard the sound and I wanted that sound. I didn't know how it was going to happen. But that was, I think, the lucky break with Battle of the Bands in 2018 at Velour. That was the point where we kind of really got into like the funnel of getting into that sound a little bit more. And that was when we got Bao and Cayman, our trombone and trumpet players,
Wow.
in on the project, and it kind of just took off from there. I think that was definitely the kicking off point for that sound.
That's awesome. How did you get started with the band? Like, how'd you guys meet and how'd you build those connections?
So the band has kind of it's what's the word I'm thinking of? It kind of circulated through a few different groups before we found the right fit. But Heath, our drummer, I've known for the longest time. He has been on the project since I was just doing singer-songwriter stuff. He was friends with a friend, and he was also in a music class I was in at UVU. And he helped out with one performance where he just played cajon, and kind of since then he's stuck around. So I'm glad he's in. He's a phenomenal drummer. He's jazz trained, so it's intense. He's very
Awesome.
good.
Yeah.
And Bao and Cayman have been in since Battle of the Bands, and I remember Bao told me that at first he said, I didn't know if you could hang. So I wasn't sure how long I was going to be a part of this.
Yeah.
But 3 years later, he's still in. So
Yeah.
I think I can hang. So that's
Yeah,
pretty
that's
cool.
great. There you go.
So Bao and Cayman are, I think, they're so involved in all of the little details of planning things and songwriting and stuff, and I'm so grateful that they're a part of it, because they bring, I think most people at shows, when they haven't seen us before, they're like, oh my gosh, the horns are so cool, and I'm like, yeah, that's what makes us cool.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy they're a part of it.
Yeah, it's like it's one thing
And
to stand out by just simply having a band, but to have like horns
Yeah,
on a band, that's next
horn section, brass section. It really kicks it up to the next. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we also have Peter, and actually no, Adrian came first. So he's our lead guitarist. But he started off playing bass for us, and um, he I met him through Cayman and Bow actually. So he's a member of the band Cinders, who
Oh
are
yeah.
just insanely good,
Yeah.
just insanely good. And uh, Bow and Cayman had played horns for them for a few recordings, and so they had gotten to know Adrian through that. And when we needed a bass player, they were like, "Oh, Adrian can do it," and so he came onto the project and played bass for a little bit. But as soon as I found out he was like a professionally trained guitarist, I was like, okay, no, we want him on guitar.
Yeah.
He's like a jazz guitarist, and he's so crazy good. He can just whip anything out of thin air.
Awesome.
So after that, we're like, we need to find a bassist, and Heath knew Peter, who's now our bassist, and he brought Peter onto the project. And he's also one of those people that, like, someone will say a song and he just starts playing the bass line for it perfectly out of nowhere.
Nice.
And yeah, I feel a little bit intimidated by the talent that's in the band. They're all so good.
That comes in handy though. I mean, that's good to have
Yeah.
behind.
Yeah, it
That's
definitely
awesome.
makes me feel like I need to get to the next level.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, how does the writing and recording process go with the whole band? Do you kind of start things, or is it all a group effort? How does that go?
So for our album that we released 2 years ago now, geez, that one was definitely a lot of, I wrote the chords and lyrics and melody, and then everyone came in and wrote all of their different parts to it. So it's very collaborative once kind of the basics of the song are written. Um, a lot of the songs ended up becoming totally new things from what they started as. And that process is just really fun to kind of get together with everybody and just kind of start figuring out where the song wants to go. But we're hoping for this next album, now that we've gone on a couple tours together up to the Northwest, and we've spent a lot more time playing together. We're hoping that we can do a lot more writing all together instead of just me bringing a song to the to the table, because they're all super good at what they do too. And I think it'll be interesting to see how much the project changes incorporating them more into the songwriting process.
Yeah, that's awesome. I bet it's exciting to get back to writing too. I mean, COVID kind of threw a wrench and everything, but
Yeah.
what are your plans coming up for like writing and for the album and all that?
So we're, because of COVID, we kind of, last year we had a bunch of plans to go touring and stuff like that, but that's definitely all been put on hold. So instead we've switched gears, and we're working on re-recording and maybe re-releasing the album. We want to go try to do more of like a professional level of production and publicizing and stuff like that for it. And I don't know if it's going to end up being the same album. It might end up being an entirely new album, which would be pretty fun.
Yeah.
But there are definitely some songs on the Soapbox album that I want to revisit and kind of see if we can jazz up a little bit with some professional level stuff, especially since we've been playing with each other for so much longer. And I feel like we could get a more exciting sound out of it than we did when we were just getting to know each other. So the goal, I think, right now is to focus on studio work and getting together and writing and getting as many gigs as we can locally, because that's always a good thing to keep us in shape musically.
Yeah, that's awesome. What would you hope the album would accomplish when it gets released?
Ooh, I feel like my main thing, so talking to Adrian about the process with Cinders, and they've been super successful in what they've been doing. I think a big part that he's mentioned is basically just getting it into as many people's ears as possible, basically. So I'm hoping that this album will just kind of get a further reach and just introduce us to more people. That was kind of the idea behind Soapbox. The title of the album was that this was us getting up on a stand and saying who we are, kind of a thing. And I'd love to see if we can push that further.
That's awesome. Yeah. And you guys have a great sound. So if like you just think it's gonna get better, I'm excited to see what that is. That's gonna be really good.
Me too. I'm excited. I think it'll be really fun.
Yeah, I do too. What's your live experience been playing, around the local scene? Like, have you guys played a lot of shows? How's that been?
Yeah, I mean, we got our start playing at Valor Battle of Bands, and we've played quite a few shows at Valor since then. I think it's a great venue. For one thing, they definitely do a lot to kind of make the Provo music scene very unique in comparison to others. The one thing that I've noticed about Provo is that there's definitely it's a very tight-knit community,
Yeah.
and that can definitely be intimidating coming into it as a new musician. And my experience was just kind of playing all of the open mic kind of things and just starting to meet people. And as soon as you meet people in the scene, you kind of start getting a little bit more confidence. And I think that's kind of helped me with being more interested in touring, because you kind of just, it's an opportunity to get to know people and to experience different music communities. And I think the competitiveness that people sometimes I think are worried about in music shouldn't be a thing, because there's room for everybody in music. It's not a sport, it's a community, and we can always make a community bigger. There's always a pocket to be filled. So with that, locally performing, I think it was just a matter of finding our pocket. Sorry. And yeah, I think it definitely took a while. It was tough going at first when it was just me, because there wasn't anything quite unique enough, I think, to really put my name out there. But having the band as a part of it definitely helped me figure out what kind of writing I want to do, and also helps me see how important it is to have other people involved, just to kind of find that niche to fit into. So that was a big part of locally performing, I think.
That's
I don't
awesome.
know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
now that you've had the band for a while, do you think you could ever go back to like a solo thing? Do you have any interest in that ever? Or do you think like a band is the only way you can do it now?
I've played a few solo shows since getting the band together, and every single time I always end up saying the song's a lot more fun with the band. I like sit there and apologize for myself, which is Adrian's scolded me for it, because he's like, he's been at some of those shows and he's always like, why are you doing that? You're selling yourself short. And I'm like, it's so much less fun though.
Yeah.
And I think playing with the band has definitely made an impact on how I like performing. It's so much more energy when you've got everybody there and you're bouncing off each other's energy, and it just creates something pretty special that I wouldn't want to ever give up.
What about like outside of playing live? How does it having a band affect you personally?
Oh, they're my best friends. They're like, I feel like they're my family in a weird way. It's just, yeah, we've spent so much time together and traveled together so much, and like we've seen each other when it's way too late. We drove home after a like 2 or 3 hour gig in Seattle to the place we were staying at, and it was south of Portland, and it was like a 4 hour drive. And goodness, we've definitely had some adventures, and I feel like that brings you pretty close. And yeah, they're my best friends. I talk to them as much as I can, and whenever I see them, it makes me so happy.
That's awesome.
So it's good.
Is there a dream venue you want to play someday?
Oof, Red Rocks. I would love to play Red Rocks Amphitheater. That is like top-notch goals.
That'd be awesome. What's the best concert you've ever been to?
Oh man, Jade Bird. She's kind of my idol. I've seen her play every time she's come to Salt Lake since the very beginning. She started out as very singer-songwriter, and she's still a singer-songwriter, but she's got that hardcore, no nonsense woman power kind
Yeah.
of songwriting and style now. And it's just every time I see her perform, I'm just like, yes, that's what it's about. And
That's awesome.
yeah, Jade
Is that
Bird,
something?
100%.
Yeah. Is that something you've seen a bit of? Like, tell me about your experience as being a woman performer in the Utah music scene. Like, how has that been for you? And like, do you see room for improvement, or what are your thoughts?
So I feel like, yeah, I think the thing that's been interesting is how many women either stick to just being singer-songwriters, or which is there's nothing wrong with, because there's some singer-songwriter females that are just so good at what they do, like Phoebe Bridgers, Lucy Dacus, they're phenomenal. But there's also a sense of people kind of keeping themselves in a safe zone. And I think in the Provo music scene is just writing like kind of in a safe place where people will like it and they know that they'll be accepted. And there's definitely a sense of um I don't know. I'm definitely intimidated by a lot of the people, the women in the scene that have kind of gotten a name for themselves because they dress well, and I think it's more of women are way more likely to compare themselves to others
Yeah.
than I think men are, and I think that definitely has an effect on musicians that are females, just kind of comparing ourselves to the other female musicians and seeing what we're not doing like them and feeling like it's not quite good enough and things like that. And I think there's definitely room in the music scene in general for women to be a little bit more unapologetic for who they are and what their sound is, and also for them to be a little bit more accepting of themselves and of other female musicians and have a little bit more of a support there. And I think things like Velour's Femme de Velour, um, that event is really cool because it focuses on the women of the music scene. But I feel like there needs to be a little bit more emphasis on things like that throughout the year, not just at one event, and throughout all the venues, not just at Velour.
Yeah. Like
So
maybe something to bring them all together and to show them, we're not all that different.
yeah, I definitely see a lot more guys making it farther and having all guy bands, and it would be great to see more women in the music scene.
Yeah. That's awesome. I love hearing your thoughts about that. So, what advice would you give to a new musician who's just starting out, who wants to start playing live, start, making songs, but doesn't quite know the next step to take? What advice would you give them?
Whew. I feel like just start putting yourself in the music scene however you feel like you can. Like if it's just helping at a venue or helping a band with like promoting and stuff like that, like just start inserting yourself into the music scene and getting to know people, because the more people you know, the more likely you are to meet other people who have a like-minded way of thinking. And I think being around musicians is something that will help inspire you to be a better musician, or to start writing, or to start trying things. It's all experimental, and I feel like the sooner you let go of perfectionism, which is a huge problem I have with songwriting, but as soon as you just allow yourself to write a bad song just so that you write a song, the closer you are to getting to where you want to be. So just putting yourself out there and just accepting whatever you do as a step in the right direction, I think is the best way to go.
That's great. I love that. Have you found any ways that help with your perfectionism? Like any ways that help push you forward when you're kind of stuck?
Um, I went to a songwriting workshop thing one day, and that was kind of my breakthrough moment of realizing it's okay to write a bad song. Because the whole thing was that you got together with a group of people you didn't know, and you wrote a song together, and then you performed it at the end of the workshop day. And it was so interesting because there are so many different levels of songwriters and different styles of songwriting, and I definitely was like feeling a little bit overwhelmed of just being like, I don't know if we're gonna get something that I like, and I don't want to perform it if I'm not gonna like it. And then finally I hit this point where I was like, no, this is fine. Like, we're gonna make a song, it's gonna be like 1 day thing, super quick. We're gonna perform it and it's gonna be over and it's gonna be fine. It'll just be a
Yeah.
good learning experience. And kind of just letting go of the need to have control over the situation at that workshop was just like, okay, this is how we got to do it. And I still, during the songwriting process, have that need for control sometimes, where I'm like, oh, this isn't going where I want it to go. I've got to just stop and not do this. But if I found more often that if I just power through and finish the song, even if it isn't what I wanted, it usually ends up that I have an easier time fixing it later on, or I end up liking it more than I thought. So kind of just being willing to let go is it's tough,
Yeah.
but it's a good skill to have in overcoming perfectionism like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it was great you had that kind of experience to be able to push you forward. Just that
Yeah.
one time, to give you a taste of what it's like to push forward. But yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, no, I think that's super important for people to hear. I mean, I just think perfectionism, it's one of the things. I think Ed Sheeran said it too, where he said you have to keep writing,
Yeah.
and that's what he had to do. I mean, I think he said he wrote like 300 songs in a couple months or something one time, just to get the cogs turning. But it's just crazy how many songs you have
Yeah.
sometimes. But yeah, that's
Hmm.
awesome. And clearly, your songs are working out. You guys sound great. I'm excited for what's coming up. What are you excited for that's coming up?
Ooh, I am excited to get back in the studio. I think that's my number one favorite part of music in general, is being in the studio and watching all of the different elements of the song come together and being able to like recognize the elements that you didn't. So when you're performing all together, you don't notice all the little things that the other people are doing. So that's, I love recording. I just love being uh in the studio with everybody. I'm
That's
excited for
awesome.
that.
I'm excited. And that new album, whatever it is, whatever ends up coming, I'm excited for it.
Yay. Yep.
It's gonna be great. Well,
It'll be
thanks for
good.
talking with me today. I appreciate your time. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for thinking of me to do this. This is a
yeah,
really cool
of
idea.
course. Happy to. And I think a lot of people are gonna love what you had to say. So I'm excited to get it out there.